Hi, everyone. My name is Roland Dupre, and I'm with Penny Goetjen, who's our author for tonight. Hi, Penny Goetjen. Come.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
You've written some wonderful books. I have The Woman Underwater is the book that we're going to talk about today, and also I looked at The Empty Chair, which takes place in the Caribbean. So, can you talk about your books and when you started and yeah.
Absolutely. Um, I write mysteries and suspense, and the settings of my books are key. That's the first thing that I select before I start writing. And from there, the storyline starts to develop. And I choose settings that are kind of near and dear to my heart, ones that I'm very familiar with. So I don't have to do a lot of research into, um, what's there, and I can describe it easily. And I've often had readers say, "Oh, I felt like I was there," or especially if it was somebody who was familiar with the area, they'd say, "Wow, that's exactly what I remember it being like." So I get that a lot. But yeah, so far I have six books published, and the first one I wrote and was Murder on the Precipice, and that's the beginning of a three-part series so far. The other two are Murder Beyond the Precipice and Murder Returns to the Precipice. And they're set on the rocky, tumultuous coast of Maine in an old family-run inn. And the inn was converted from it was previously an all-girls school. And that school had a little bit of a twisted history.
For
And
real?
before it was,
It
pardon?
it really had one, or is this in your book? It
Oh,
really.
this is in the book. This is in
Oh,
the book.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it's hard. There's a blurred line between reality and fiction.
I
Definitely in
know.
my life.
I want to welcome Marianne, who's here. Hello, Marianne, welcome. And Penny Goetjen is our author today. And you're muted, but oh, hello. And now you're out of the view, but you're here. Welcome. So keep going. You with the school that has this in
Okay.
coast of Maine. No.
Yeah, so on the coast of Maine, this old family-run inn had been converted from an old previous all-girls school, and this girls' school had a little bit of a history that came with it, where one of the young female students had gone missing, and it was never solved. So that was kind of forgotten until it was converted to an inn, and then one of the young female guests went missing. So the question comes up, of course, is history repeating itself? So the main character, Elizabeth, she grew up in the inn, and her grandmother uh, still runs it. So things have kind of gotten into quite a interesting situation. So Elizabeth's grandmother calls her and asks her if she'd come up to Maine and just kind of help her out with some things. So she gets there and finds out what's going on and gets embroiled in the whole situation. And of course, you've also got a hurricane barreling up the coast, as they're trying to find, where the missing guest is, and a lot of other things go on too. So it's a fun series. And I should say that all of my books they're mysteries, but the crimes are not these gory, graphic crimes. They're not in your face. It's really more about solving the mystery, figuring out who did it. It's a puzzle. You're looking at the relationships, you're enjoying the setting. And so there's no disturbing crime scene for you to have to endure, because I don't like reading books like that, so I don't write them that way. So
I
that's
I didn't notice anything missing. Okay, I didn't
oh,
know.
good.
So, and I don't, of course, I don't read a lot of gore, but I didn't notice that that was anything to be missing. I thought that I mean, when I read Women Underwater anyway, I felt that that tragedy was present, and it's clear that there's some gore in the background, in the backstory, but you don't offer a description of that. And
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that it's not missing.
anyway,
That's good. There's too much else going on, so that's good. So that's the series that's set on the coast of Maine. I call it the Precipice series because each of the books has precipice in the name, precipice meaning a high cliff. And then the two that are set in the Caribbean, The Empty Chair, Murder in the Caribbean, and then the sequel, Over the Edge, Murder Returns to the Caribbean. Very different setting, and it's a place that we've gone to many times as a family, and I've just fallen in love with it. I mean, the turquoise water does not get old. So in fact, one of the trips there, I was in the process of writing the sequel to Murder on the Precipice. And here I am surrounded by turquoise water and palm fronds blowing in the tropical breeze. I couldn't focus on Maine. And then this story kind of hit me over the head, like, oh, I got to write. So I had a pad of paper on my lap. So I flipped the page over and I started jotting down everything that was coming to my head.
wow.
So that's good. It's a fun story. Olivia is she lives with her father in Boston, and her parents are divorced. Her mother works as a photographer down in St. Thomas, but they received word that her mother has passed away from a boating accident. So her father sends her down to just take care of her mother's affairs. But when she gets there, she learns that the police have no record of her death or even an accident. So she takes that as her, there's hope to find her mother. So she searches to the ends of the island for her, but in the process gets caught up with the same criminal element that may have caused her mother her life. So those are the two that are set in the Caribbean. And just for a second, going back to the coast of Maine, the reason that is a place that that's near and dear to my heart is because my mother grew up in Maine. And so I've been going to Maine since I was a baby and fell in love with the coast, very early on. And we took our kids there year after. We still go, we go up I still have family up there. So it's a place that I've always, loved. And it just, the rocky, tumultuous coast just seemed like the perfect setting for a murder mystery. So that was the Murder on the Precipice was my very first book. And that just seemed like the very fitting place to set a mystery like that. So it's worked out quite well. So those are those two. So then that brings us to The Woman Underwater. And this is set in Connecticut. And because I've lived in Connecticut longer than anywhere else, we moved around a lot growing up. But even so, I've lived in Connecticut longer than anywhere else. And it's set behind the stone walls of a private boarding school. And Victoria, who is the protagonist, her husband is was a teacher there. He went missing 7 years earlier on a field trip to New York City. So, supposedly missing without a trace. There were no witnesses. What few clues they had went cold very quickly, and they never even found his car. So, so she's been living with this for 7 years. Her friends are trying to encourage her to move on with her life, and she's got two sons, one of which goes to that boarding school. And but she won't give up. She's not gonna conclude that he's gone, because someone has to know something, and that person may be closer to her than she realizes. So
It's
that's The Woman Underwater.
it's a very good story, and I hesitate to talk too much about it because there's a lot of giveaway if I mention it. And it's a good mystery. It's a really great mystery with the academy that's there.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
these politics of the academy, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, sneaky. But there's a character, could you talk about the character of Millie, who's Victoria's mother, and how you develop that character? Because that's a great character.
I think she's my favorite character in that book. I even had a reviewer suggest that my next book, she should be the protagonist because there's so much depth to her and she's a lot of fun to write, and she does provide some comedic relief in a storyline that is otherwise pretty tense, and but she's very quirky, and I mean, she is in the early stages of Alzheimer's, but she's not quite where she has to, she's still functioning very well. But you never know what's going to come out of her mouth, or and her poor daughter Victoria is, holds her breath basically when they're in public,
Mhm.
it's a very tense situation. But it's funny how that character came about. She was the result of two people I'd never met before, but I just observed them. One was I was signing books, and it was it was in the middle of winter, it was cold. This woman came in the door with who appeared to be her daughter. She was all bundled up, and she starts peeling off layers, her hat, her scarf, her coat, her this, her that, ended up with quite a pile. And then she was like, kind of patting herself down and checking herself out. And she looked at me and she said, I got to make sure I don't take off too much. My daughter hates when I embarrass her in public. So we both shared a laugh, and I just thought, oh, I've got to, I've got to make some notes, and I've got to make her into a character one day. And that's what I do. I collect characters when I see interesting people like that. So I jot down on my phone some notes. And then not long after that, I saw someone biking past our house, who was kind of dressed a little quirky and had a very colorful bike, and she had very colorful flowered leggings on, and she was an older woman, and just like a little basket in the front of her bike, and just was zipping along, just happy as can be. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I love her too. So, and somehow the two got, melded together, and they turned into Millie. And I loved writing Millie. I mean, I could see, maybe she does need her own book. But it was just,
She's a character in a wonderful, she moves the plot along in odd ways too. The scene with the pond that she just happens upon this,
yeah,
she's
yes.
she's been drawn to the pond. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
really good scene.
yeah.
And I guess I was asking too about these details of the descriptions that you do are so detailed and so wonderful. And I really feel like I'm there. And there's a description of the helicopter accident. Could you talk a little bit about the helicopter accident? Because I thought you may have been in one and you knew what it was. Okay.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm happy to say though that I have not been in a helicopter accident, but it was just one of those things I just thought I would. I tried to imagine it, and I did some research into what the inside of a helicopter looked like. Um, the easy part was writing it from a layman's perspective. I didn't need to write it from the pilot's perspective, so I could be writing it just from what she was seeing and feeling. And so that part, I guess, was easy. But once I had the understanding of what the inside looked like, and I've flown a lot, and I do um, I do tend to think of all the possible things that could go wrong when we're flying. And I do watch, there is oh, I can't remember the name of the show, and I couldn't tell you what network it was on, but they recreate plane crashes, and they try to figure out what went wrong. I mean, yes, it was a very tragic event, but it's just so impressive how detailed they get, and the painstaking steps they take to figure out what went wrong. And I that's fascinating to me. It's like they're solving a puzzle, just like a murder mystery is solving a puzzle. Um, but so I guess I've had enough experience flying in general and things going wrong, but and enough research. But then once I wrote the chapter, I did give it to a friend of mine who flew helicopters in the Army, and I said, "Can you just take a look at this and see what you think? See if I'm completely, off here." I thought sure he was going to say, "That's not even close," but he read through it and he said, this is good. He says he just wanted to change one term because I was calling something maybe not exactly the right term. And he was right. But because Victoria wouldn't have known that term, I chose not to correct that, and I left it the way it was. So I guess my imagination just kind of took over and
Yeah, you filled in the gaps.
I
It's an
did.
incredible scene, and I couldn't, I was amazed at the
Wow.
detail. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that I pulled that off.
you know, I always ask writers what your process is and how you write. What do you do? Because obviously it's a lot of work and it's daily. It's got to be daily, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I do, if I've well, like Sunday, I had a deadline for Monday morning, and I ended up pulling an all-nighter Sunday night to because I thought I could get it done. I have no concept of time. I mean, just ask my poor husband. I've gotten much better about, you know, not being late to things. I used to be notoriously late. I just have no concept of time. I get on the right side of the brain, and I, and I just I don't have a good feel for how long it's going to take me. Well, plus it's not like adding up a column of numbers. It's a creative process. You don't know how long it's going to take. Um, so that was a rough night. But I'm glad I got it done. But yeah, it's not every day for me because I tend to go on binges and but the last several weeks has been pretty much every day. Things were kind of crazy around the house, so I've just been going down the street to my local Starbucks and grabbing a high top table and just parking myself there. And you would think that would be very distracting because it's noisy, there's people going by, and there's music above my head, but the music was actually really good, so I enjoy the music. But only twice in like a 3 or 4 week period did someone actually stop by and say hello. So I was, I think they kind of sensed that I was busy and didn't, but only, and even then it was a quick, I know you're busy, just wanted to say hi and zip back out type of thing. So, but I've never done that before. Usually I just go, shut the door and you know,
Yeah.
find it, and then very often it's during the night. Very often it's, I start 11 o'clock at night or something, just keep going as long as I can. I usually have a word count that I try to get to each day. Um,
Do you
and
go back
then
and edit? Do you edit, or do you have an editor? I mean,
Oh yeah, that's why I had to pull an all-nighter Sunday night because I had to get it to my editor Monday morning. But oh yeah, I mean, I do a lot of self-editing once I first want to get the story down because that's so important. If you try to edit while you're writing, you really kind of take yourself out of the creative process, and you can't be worried about it's not perfect because it's not it's gonna it's I equate it to like a redecorate or a renovation project. It gets real ugly before it gets pretty again. So you just have to expect it to start out ugly, and it's going to be just fine even when you think, oh my lord, this is a mess. You just have to believe, you're going to get there, you're going to get there. But what I do, let me just grab my recent manuscript. What I do when I first, before I start typing anything for when I'm writing a manuscript, I put in big letters, across the top of the page, I say, note, this is a rough draft. Any attempt to construe it as anything else will be met with dire consequences. And then I have a winking emoji. And that kind of gives me it gives me permission to write badly, because I think a lot of writers we have in the back of our heads, oh, what if somebody picked this up and started reading it? Oh, that would be terrible. So this gives me the right or gives me permission to write poorly just to get the story down. Then I go back, multiple times, and I'll go through different sections and rewrite things and move things around. And then when I think everything's in the right order, then I'll read it through out loud. But first I'll put it to the side for like, a week or two if I can stand it. So I come back with a fresher perspective. So I try to go through it as much as I can. So when I hand it off to my editor, it's in as, it's as good as it can be, as good as I can make it. And then she takes it from there and makes it even better. So it is a lot of work. And in the middle of it, there's a lot of self-doubt. You think, oh, yes, I may have published, 6 previous ones, but maybe that's all I had in me. And you start thinking maybe the next one, but then you get it done. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I got it.
Well, and it helps to have an editor, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine doing it without one, because you can't be objective about your own work. You spend so much time with it that you might think it sounds good, and maybe it sounds good, but you need that fresh set of eyes, that professional editor to tell you what you might not want to hear, that this
Mm.
character isn't strong enough, or this doesn't make sense here, and really, really polish it, because you can't expect to do everything. You focus on what you do the best, and then let the professionals take it from there and edit and design the cover and everything else.
I
So,
love it. I think it's great that you've been able to do this. And I do love the colors on these, the color combinations. So
mm.
this is going to be the covers of your books will always be these colors then? Is that what's going to happen?
Not necessarily. I think the only thing I said to the graphic designer on this last one was if they could do that kind of a turquoise, because
Yeah.
that's that's the that is the common color throughout the 6 books. I think because it's like my favorite color. I love that. And
Beautiful. It's so stunning, and I love that they're all within the same family of graphic
mm,
design and everything. It's
mhm,
really nice.
yeah.
So, where can we buy these books?
They are available everywhere, online, Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. They're in print and ebooks,
Mhm.
but also bookstores. If they aren't already on the shelves, they can order them very easily. So they're readily available.
Oh, great. And the first one is Murder on the Precipice.
Right.
So
Mhm.
if we started wanting to read them, we would start with
Mm.
that one, you think? But I
Well,
think this one too is just, I mean, this is not going to be a series, is it? Th-
no. So this is a standalone, so you could
Yeah.
start there. That's a good place to
Oh, it
start.
is a good book. It is a
Oh, thank
good book.
you.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
so I'm going to end the recording now, and we can talk further. Okay, so I have to pay attention.
Okay.
Stop recording. Okay, bye everybody.